How I crossed the country in a solar-powered production EV. My plan was so perfect I didn't even need to test it. But I did anyway, and it turns out I needed to make a few changes. Here's all the details on what worked out and what did not. Then at the end, I have the next bigger and better project, so stick around or skip around. Either way, there should be lots for those that want to engineer it out. If not, feel free to jump to the end on this one. So I started off at the Red Ball Garage, going all the way to the Portofino Inn, solar powered. The first thing that did work was my range calculations. I did some early testing in the Tesla Model Y, and I was able to get 400 miles range on a single charge. So with that in mind, I just needed to add it in the elevation changes. Calculate that. I've got my trusty calculator here. I took the mass of the vehicle, 4,000 plus 1,000 for the payload, and then I have 1,300 feet gained and 10,000 feet lost. So I go down 10, up 13. And where did I get that? Over here on Google Earth. If you map a route, get directions, and then right click, it'll bring up the elevation changes, and you can see it was pretty flat for most of the trip. And then right at the end, when my battery's low, I got to go up almost 4,000 feet. So that was kind of hairy. I wanted to make sure I could make it. But it gives the total gain here, 13,923, and loss, 10,346. So taking those numbers, putting them in here, then I calculate the potential energy, which is mass times little g gravitational constant times the height. I get that for going up and going down. So the potential energy that I could put back into the battery is 21 kilowatt hours, and the potential energy spent going uphill would be 28 kilowatt hours. Now I have to run that through the drivetrain, which is not 100% efficient. From past experience looking at motor curves and whatnot at General Motors and other companies, I kind of estimate the gearbox at 97% efficient. They're pretty efficient. It's probably got two parallel shafts, so it's got two gear meshes, and a gear mesh, single gear mesh, can be 99% efficient. But then you got bearings, and you got churning losses from the oil sloshing around. You got pumping losses, so I'd say 97. For the motor, 96. It kind of depends on where you're at in the map of the motor. If you're going really fast or really slow high torque, they're not the most efficient. But I'll be going 55 miles an hour, so I should be kind of in a sweet middle spot, right where the motor is going to be most efficient. And the power electronics, not too sure. They might be more efficient. I put 97. This is what's going to take the three-phase current from the motor and put it into DC for the battery and vice versa. So altogether, you got 90% efficient. Now, draining the battery, we've got 75 kilowatt hours. You can get 75 kilowatt hours out. However, to charge it, you do have to put in a little bit more than that. I didn't account for that. I figured it would be close enough for this, and I didn't really know how efficient charging a battery would be when you're regenning. But anyhow, you got the battery energy used to go uphill. You've got to do 28 kilowatt hours of work, and you got to do that through the efficiency. So divide it by the efficiency. So it's going to be a bigger number. So yep, takes more power to go uphill. And the same for regen. You're not going to get out as much as the potential energy because of efficiency losses. So in this case, I multiply by the efficiency, and I get a total energy spent just in the powertrain getting the vehicle up and down the hill. Doesn't account for any of the rolling resistance, aerodynamic drag, anything like that. I cancel all that out because I'm going constant speed 55, and I know at 55 miles an hour I can go 400 miles with that much capacity used in the battery. So flat land, I can get 187.5 watt hours per mile, and I confirmed it a few times. It's doable. It's not easy. You have to drive really smooth and try and stay under 55 or as close as you can. So with all that in mind, you're starting out at 100%. You're going 333 miles. You've got your battery capacity minus the potential energy losses and gains. And I calculated an arrival percent of 1%. I ended up doing it -2%, which I wasn't too concerned with because the battery is, yes, 75 kilowatt hour rated, but I believe it's actually 80 total, but 75 is usable considering battery degradation over time. Also, if you discharge it really fast, it won't be able to put out the full capacity. So there's kind of some buffer built in here, just like in a vehicle. You get down to E, it says you have 0 miles range in fuel, and you've still got a little reserve left. Same thing here. And I've also got a 5 kilowatt hour battery in the trunk that I can use to charge the car through the inverter at about 80% efficiency as I've tested it. So I could get another 4 kilowatt hours in from that. So I wasn't too concerned, kind of cutting it close to 1%. It looks scarier than it really was. Let's see, what else? Oh, yeah, I had the tire pressures all the way up at the max tire rated pressure with 52. The manufacturer recommendation is 42. But if you look at the vehicle mass, let's say the vehicle mass is around 4,200, and I've got extra 1,000 pounds, 5,200. You can see they're equivalent in terms of the ratio. So in theory, the contact patch of the tire in contact with the road would be the same size for the added weight at the higher pressure. So as far as the tire dynamics are concerned, there should be no concern at all. It's within the spec of the tire. It would ride a little lower and be under damped because you have that extra mass, but honestly, I couldn't tell the difference. So no concerns on the tire, although occasionally when it would get hot, the tires would go above 52, and then the car would start chirping at me and warning me that the tires are over pressure, but it wasn't really a big concern. Also, aero is super critical. So some people have thought about, well, what about a trailer? Something like that. It really hurts the aero. Originally, I planned to do it with an RV, towing the RV so I could have room to pack everything in. But an RV is going to cut your range in half, and the solar array was already getting so large, it was just not feasible to do a trailer. Even a small aerodynamic trailer, if it's 25%, that means I got to carry that much more solar panels. And it was already a workout and a half just setting up the panels every single time. Actually, speaking of the panels, this is what I designed it to look like. So you got 64 panels, and one of the issues I had was shading. Originally, I planned on having no issue with shading. I could space them out. However, I got a late start in the year, and the sun was lower in the sky. I had shade from trees nearby, and also the early morning and evening, they cast really long shadows because the sun is low in the sky. So because of that, I was getting shade on the panels. In full sun on a good day, it was charging great. But there was a lot of times when I wish I just had a little bit more space to space these out. How that looked was, let's see, here. So here's the layout on the panels. You got the 110 watt SunPower panel and the 100 watt. The only difference is they sort the cells to pick out the best of the best. And I couldn't get these anymore. They're unavailable, and they're actually out of production. But I was able to get a bunch of these at a pretty good price. So you've got your rated voltage, rated current, and this is at kind of optimal operating conditions, and your open circuit voltage. That's what you have to protect for. If you've got no current, your electronics have to handle that open circuit voltage. They said max system voltage 45, but that's just because they didn't go through all the regulatory hoops to get it at 600 volts. And the connectors, the junction boxes were exceptionally high quality, higher than any of the other flexible solar panels. So even called and confirmed, says, yeah, there should be no issue going to 600 volts like a lot of the other panels. They're also lightweight, 2 kilograms. I looked at two options, a 16 in series with 3 in parallel and 4 in parallel. So I calculated up the system volts, and this is kind of the loaded voltage, the optimal, and that's where you want your inverter to be able to run well at. The open circuit voltage, so some inverters can't handle a certain high voltage. Mine was up to 500, so there's no concern there, although some of them I looked at were less. The current, system power, just a rough estimate of daily kilowatt hours. saying that you could get 6 times that in one day, which would be attainable, I think, in the summer, but in my conditions it was not. So full day charge, 3 days and 2 days respectively. Then I kind of made a little matrix to look at the mass and the cost of each system. First I looked at the MultiPlus by Victron, then the RS Solar, which is not available in the US, but I was going to try and get it. It looked pretty promising, but the Solarc ended up beating them all out. So for the Victron systems, you need 4 of their batteries, and with the all-in-one RS, you just need that one inverter, then 64 panels. The MultiPlus, you need 2 of those, and then you need 2 charge controllers to get the full extraction of the solar. With the Solarc, you just need the panels, the all-in-one Solarc, and 1 large 48-volt battery. Then I get the total mass and pounds and the price of each component, and then I do a sum product, so I multiply whatever's in here times here and then sum it all up. So if there's a number here, it uses it. If not, not. So you can see the mass, one was 500 pounds, 430 and 434. So the Solarc was only 4 pounds heavier, but I think it was 10,000 watt total PV input compared to 4,000 on the RS by Victron. So huge bump in power potential. And the whole system was cheaper. So about $14,000, which, you know, it's not cheap, but it's cheaper. And then here's the layout. So I do a U shape where the power starts here, they connect, come back up, so I have 2 terminations right at the same point. And again, I couldn't space them out, but someone in the comments, actually 2 people I think, had a really good idea that why not take them and alternate them. So instead of that, you can alternate them and you can connect like this. And that way you get a lot of space between the panels. Linearly, you're still constrained by the length of those cables, but because they're alternating, you get a lot of extra space. The only problem is, how do you return that line back to the front? So if we do this, and then we just kind of mirror it like this, now we shouldn't have any shading issues, but we zigzag down here, but then we're still terminating here, so we have to jump all the way over to the other panel and then zigzag back. So I would need a separate cable to do that jump. And I may have been able to make it work. I've had some extra connectors, and I could have sacrificed a few of my cables and then run more cables in parallel and still been able to make it work. But by the time the comment came through and I posted the video, it was too late. I was already done, completed it, so I didn't get to try this out. But that was a really good idea to the 2 people that recommended that. So one issue I had was planning out the campsites. I started off on Google Maps. I'd zoom in, and I'd try and find areas where I had enough area to set up the panels and I could do some measurements here. This spot looked good, it was taken. This spot looked good, it was taken. This spot ended up working out okay, but it had this large tree here which shaded it in the morning, and then I got shade here in the afternoon. So not so great. And I had planned on leaving in September when kids were in school and maybe there'd be less campers, but I ended up leaving in October because the panels were held up in customs, which resulted in later in the year, and everyone was out for the fall colors, and so everyone was camping again. And after 3 days, no more sites were available, and I had to move on with only a 60% charge. So site availability was probably one of the biggest issues. I ended up finding this place, but again, it was, where do I put the panels? You camp here, you park here. This is reserved for horses. I thought, well, maybe I could put them down here somewhere, but this is a big hill. We don't really see it on the image here, so it shades this, and it's really rocky and not a good place. Too much car traffic too. I did find this little spot where I could park in the corner and use this grassy area to set up the panels. And that was another problem with setting up panels on the ground, is that any ground obstructions can be an issue. If it's not a big, flat, smooth area, Here I just had leaves and shade from this tree falling down, and just a few leaves on the panel was making a big difference. I set up some panels out here to test them, and I was getting over 100 watts a panel, no problem. But when they're all strung together and I got a little bit of grass in front of them, it was just kind of an issue. So then I started getting really bumped around. I come down here. This was a pretty good spot. You got great southerly sun access, no trees shading it, and lots of area to put it down. And the park person came around and insisted that nothing be on the grass. And he was going around to every campsite, kicking anyone that had anything on the grass, had to get it onto the pad. So after setting up the whole array, I had to move it onto this pad, which was a pea gravel packed down, super tight, designed for heavy RVs to park on. So I couldn't get any lag screws in, nothing. I could hold the panels down. Wind was blowing them around. And then all that combined, I get the forecast and I got 4 days of rain, absolutely no charging. So I'm like, I'm out of there. I camped out in this hotel for a little while, just waited for the rain to pass. And then I found another spot up here, Defeated Creek, much better park, better area for setting up the solar panels. But again, I did have shade on the trees, but it was pretty good. So I got a good charge there. In fact, yeah, no, I didn't. I only got 30% charge. I think the campsite was up and I had to move on again. And I was getting desperate. I was looking anywhere to find another campsite and there was just nothing available. So I ended up hooking with Fulton on his farm, private property. He invites me out, takes care of me. It was awesome. So I come to this location, I'm driving here, and I've got this huge area to charge. He puts me up in his barn-dominium, and I'm staying there. He's feeding me, taking care of me. I'm helping him move. It was like just being an adopted son for a while. It was pretty awesome. Got a full charge. Then he calls a buddy who has a hunting lodge, and boom, I got another spot. Get another full charge here. And I'm staying in a hunting lodge, and I'm charging out here. Super awesome. And then the next spot, I thought I could make it to Oklahoma City. It was a huge stretch, but I couldn't do it. So I stopped here on the border of Oklahoma and stayed at this hotel and said, hey, can I, charge a little bit out back? So they had this nice big spot out here. And wait a second. Is that me? They got a satellite image of me? No way. Those are my panels. Yeah. And there's the school bus. Oh my goodness, I found myself. What? That is awesome. Okay, that's cool. All right, so I get a good charge there. And then I stay up here somewhere with my uncle. Didn't want to give his location out. But that was nice. Got another full charge in Oklahoma City. Got some really awesome beef jerky. And then I'm off to another campsite. This one was pretty good. It was really windy, but I got a good charge, and there was no one out there. They were doing construction. I think there's even a fire. Oh, yep, there's the fire. I was there before the fire, and it just burned the whole thing up. Yep, that's sad, but usually grows back better than it was before, so it'll be back. And I was charging right about here. That was pretty good. And then I get at this motel. This was one of the more unique charge locations. So my uncle works at an airport. So I was like, yeah, maybe I'll call the airport. Maybe they'll let me charge. So I call the airport manager here at Moriarty. And boom, he's like, yeah, come on over. So I put the panels out here. I'm at an airport, so I don't have to worry about anyone messing with my stuff. I can leave it alone. I can come hang out in the pilot lounge here. I had some coffee and whatnot. Even a shower and a bathroom if I needed it. Yeah, so I set up here. Then I jump on my one wheel for transportation and come over here to the motel. Stayed right here. This was pretty good. This was a really good charge location. And it's a really awesome site. They did movies and stuff there. But also, if you remember the Google Titan, I think. It was a solar-powered airplane that was going to fly around and beam down satellite internet to everybody. And then it kind of didn't go so good. But they were located here. And then now it's owned by, I think, a company that's doing some kind of blimp version of the same thing. Not quite sure. But, with Starlink now, it's kind of tough to sell someone on a plane flying around for internet. But excellent location. They had a really good glider museum. There's lots of gliders and hang gliders and world records that are set out here. So this is probably one of the more fun places to stay. So if you're ever in Moriarty, go to the Sunset Motel. It's a pretty cool place. And again, I have a video on each one of these locations, so you can check it out. And there's a link to, I don't know if I already said it, to all these stops. It'll be in the description. Next was Hallbrook, BLM. Someone I hooked up with online told me about this place. Great location. I missed all the cows. They weren't there when I was there. I didn't think they would trample the solar panels. There was some concern. But cattle in general are really skittish about things like that on the ground. These cattle guards, they do not want to mess with that. So I figured my solar array looks enough like cattle guard that they wouldn't want to get tangled up in it. They don't know how hard or strong or sharp any of that stuff is. So, but this is their watering hole, and this is their feeding trough, and this is an old AT&T relay station back in the day. Now it's just a cell tower. And from there, I got my final BLM site. Great location. I go back. Lots of space to set up. Again, I wish I could zigzag my panels. I got to charge so much quicker there. And then boom, I am done. I make it to the finish line. Actually, let's look at some of those charging stats. So this is the first month, starting in September 3rd. So I drove all that night, and then I got there, started charging. You can see the PV, which is the solar input, photovoltaic. Load is how much went into the car, and then charge and discharge is how much went in and out of the auxiliary battery. So it's not 100% efficient, so they don't all match up perfectly, but you can see I got a decent charge that first day, and the next day was better, and then not so good. It was not so good. Then boom, you get another nice day, and then it's not so good anymore. In fact, what was that? The 26th of that month. So, oh yeah, that was the Prime Springs Wildlife, the hunting lodge. Great location, but the first few days I was there, it's just all raining, so not a lot happened. And then the next month, one more month. This was a 2-month trip. Originally I thought perfect conditions, 20 days, 2 days of charge, although it wasn't realistic because I didn't really consider I'm not 20 anymore, and setting up and tearing down an array one day and then the next day and then driving all night and doing that for an extended period of time, I was not up to that task. 3 days was better. Those were the good days, the good trips. But yeah, so I was figuring 20 days, absolute ideal conditions, 30 days, probable, and worst case 40. And 40 turned into 50 something, almost 2 months. And here's the second month. Oh, let me capture all that data. And you can see I had a few good days, even that late in the year. So this is November, and I'm pulling 31.7 kilowatt hours in one day from my array this late in the year with all the shading and everything. So all things considered, it went pretty good, leaving as late as I did. Actually, yeah, let's look at some of those solar charts, because I almost canceled the trip. Let's see, because I was going to leave in September, back one. I was going to leave in September. The idea was get down south as quick as possible onto I-40 and then cruise across into all this nice, good solar radiation. But panels delayed in customs, and boom, it's October. I'm about to call it off, and I'm looking at this chart, and I'm thinking, if I can just get out there quick enough, then I've got plenty of sunlight still. I mean, that's pretty good. But No, because of the issues, I was out in November, and then it's pretty sparse. In fact, I just barely made it in before it snowed. On my way back, all the way back to Michigan, where I'm at, it started snowing on me. So if I was out there a day or two longer, I could have been snowed in, and definitely not charging when it's snowy outside. So I ended up making it, but I think ideally I'd want to leave earlier in the summer, not midsummer. Yeah, you get the best solar radiation in the middle of the summer, but I'm not camping 110 degrees in the desert. No, no thanks. So I would probably want to leave in May before it gets too hot while you're still getting good sun. And then if you're stuck out there a little longer, then you just get more and more sun. So I don't know, maybe in the future, get 15, 20 guys and some Apteras outfitted, a little better than my rig, and you could fly across the country in maybe 2 weeks or something. So that would be pretty cool. So yeah, I almost canceled it, but I said, what the heck, I'll just go for it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, then I just supercharge back to Michigan. Let's see. I think I kind of went over everything. Oh, I wanted a special thanks to, well, the first 3,000 subscribers. You guys are awesome. I've got nothing but encouraging, awesome comments, which really help keep me going, because there was one time I wanted to quit, and I called my wife. I was like, I don't know, I think I'm coming home. But she's like, you're not coming home until you're coming from the Portofino Inn. So that was the goal. So, special thanks to the Portofino Inn Hotel. I'll put a link there. They were the first to reach out to me and say, hey, we'll give you a free night at the place and feed you and take care of you. So that was great, and it was pretty cool getting there. And then I had a out of spec podcast interview. Let's see. Yeah, so if you search Solar Cannonball Run, this is the out of spec podcast interview. And before I even started, I was on Monroe Live, and that was kind of my first bump in subscribers. Saw me there. I said I was going to do it, and I did it, so that's kind of cool. And then Carl here interviewed me. We had a good chat. So I'll put the links into these. This was the ABC News interview, and unfortunately, it's a dead link now. It's not active. I apologize. Maybe you caught it before, and then these are some of my videos and some other similar. This guy's got some pretty cool stuff too. So there's that. And then other people that are doing similar stuff. There was Cannonball Sun. They tried the summer before me, had a mechanical failure. This is a true electric car. And then they did it after me, and they blew my record away. However, they're not a production EV, and they have a lot of these have a chase vehicle, so they got someone behind them with parts, and they got multiple drivers. My endeavor was purely solo, and I carried everything with me the whole trip, so I didn't have any support, nothing. These guys did something similar, Rue de Sol. This is cool, although they were again plagued with mechanical issues and weren't able to complete their trip. And Solarola, they do some cool builds out of vans. And my favorite, the GM Sun Racer, that inspired me as a kid. I used to love learning about this thing, solar power, and I just loved it. Oh yeah, some other questions people had, about putting panels on the car. You don't really get a whole lot. You can get maybe a couple hundred watts, but one, I'm driving at night, so that doesn't help. But even if you did put them on there, they add a lot of wind resistance, and they don't really put much power back in. In fact, they don't even have enough power to critically power the system, just stay idle. So just for the car to be on and in a state of charge probably takes 100 or 200 watts. And if that's all you got in solar, what you have to do is charge an auxiliary battery up all day and then dump it all back into the car at once. And you don't really get very much. Wind turbines, maybe. They're kind of big and heavy, and I was already pressed for space and weight. Okay, now the best part. What's next? So the next project, it's time to go bigger and more luxurious. This is the GM Bright Drop van. This thing has a range of almost 300 miles. It's got the powertrain out of the Hummer EV. It's got a front drive unit, a rear drive unit, a super big battery, and it's a production vehicle, so no modifications. Well, not too many. And then fold out solar array. Now this is based on a new upcoming SunPower, or now Maxion solar panel that's 330 watts each. So a total of 6,000 watts solar, but you've got sun tracking. So you can move with the sun and then at night close up. That could be about a 40% boost in total harvest from the two that do track. You need a little shade here, but there's a lot. This is just in the beginning. So what's really cool about this project is I want everyone to help me. So this is done in Onshape, which is totally open. Anyone can access this model. I'll put a link below. You can go and you can download this model or use it. You could save your own copy. You could modify it. The idea is it's a collaboratively designed. Maybe I'll do some live YouTube lives where we just go through and just start working on the design. This is just a crude cartoon compared to what the finished product would look like. But this would be able to charge itself, run AC, and do it all while inside a cabin with a queen size bed that comes down. You got a 55-inch TV, speakers, everything you need, a couch that would convert into a bunk bed so you could sleep 4 people in here. And this can all change, right? Let's say we come up with one configuration and then it branches off into another configuration that doesn't have a desk, or it has doesn't have the extra bed, has more space, and then it would have big, large windows, kind of electronics power room, then a shower and a toilet. And it's all done in the browser through Onshape. So we can all work on it together. And if you want to contribute or help in any way, maybe some guys can get access to actually modify the model. And any contribution would be awesome, even if it's just a like and a subscribe. And if you want to see when I go live, I think if you click the bell, then it'll alert you when I go live. So this is the next project. And again, it's kind of crude. There's a lot of stuff that has to be developed, but we could all do it together. And this could be the perfect vehicle. I think it solves all the problems I had, and you're living in luxury. I don't know. It's just a win-win. So let me know what you think. I've got some other project ideas, but right now this is the one I think would be the most fun to work on. So thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video. Oh, I almost forgot. If you're still here, I'll put a link to Discord to discuss everything and then post pictures, links, all kinds of cool stuff. And another question people ask me is, what are you doing with your old panels and stands? Well, I'm going to sell them. That'll help me recoup the cost, and it'll be collector's item for anyone that wants them. So the panel and the stand back in the original box. Maybe I'll wipe some of that Arizona dust off. And hold on, I need a drink. A little long-winded here. So yeah, I think shipping is going to be about 30 something, and then the stands, I think those ended up costing me 40, but eventually I'll be able to get them at a lower price. And the panels 125-ish, so I think you add it all up, it'd be about $200. So if you're interested in getting one of the original panels that I did this trip with the stand, it'd be $200, and you can email me. There's an email on the YouTube page. Let me know. And yeah, and I'll just do Venmo. I don't have anything set up, so that would help me out a lot too. So thanks again. And I guess we're almost at 3,000 subs, so we'll see what happens with this new project. Thanks.